I'm very proud of the guys, and we're fighting, and we're staying with very good teams, very close. We had an overtime in Cleveland, I think it was. We had overtime versus New York. We're right there versus very good teams. We're creating a lot of trouble for their opponents, and I'm just proud of how we play defensively, offensively. Nothing's going to be perfect. We make mistakes. We weren't a lot in those situations. We're a very young team, those close game situations. So we try to figure it out still. But I'm so proud. We have a very bright future.
Hey Rip City, this is Scoot Henderson, and it's time to open the briefcase with Casey Holdahl.
Greetings, Blazer fans, and welcome to The Briefcase, presented by Spirit Mountain Casino. Episode 142 of The Briefcase, presented by Spirit Mountain Casino. I am Casey Holdahl, and that was Deni Avdija discussing Portland's overtime loss to the Knicks Wednesday night at Moda Center, one of the most entertaining games of the season in the NBA and for the Trailblazers. Blazers getting outlegged in overtime, Mikal Bridges hitting a buzzer-beating three-pointer to end the game in an otherwise very exciting game. Lots of lead changes, lots of physical play, not a whole lot of fouls, which was kind of cool that they just let them play on Wednesday nights. Blazers, unfortunately, weren't able to get the win, but they did turn in a heck of a performance, multiple performances on multiple different levels. You had Deni Avdija, who turned in yet another fantastic game. Scoot Henderson, a phenomenal fourth quarter, one of his best efforts of his career. You got Natalie Gilbert, Natalie Zito now returning to the Moda Center to sing the National Anthem. Just a great night at Moda Center on Wednesday night. Really a reminder of how great and enthusiastic and just how big of a community there is here in Portland and in the Northwest about basketball, and when great basketball is being played, just how fun of an environment it can be. We saw that Wednesday night. Hopefully we'll see more of that going forward. So we'll talk about that game, and we'll hear from Dewayne Hankins, Trailblazers President of Business Operations, about a number of initiatives the team is engaged in on this edition of The Briefcase, presented by Spirit Mountain Casino. Well, after facing the Detroit Pistons at home and then the Golden State Warriors in San Francisco in back-to-back games on Sunday and Monday, Trailblazers had Tuesday off before beginning a 7-game homestand on Wednesday, starting with the New York Knicks. And again, what a game it was. Easily one of the best games of the season for the Trailblazers and in the NBA. Building was rocking. A lot of Knicks fans too. I think the Knicks have been winning enough now to where like their fan base is starting to revitalize, or at least people who claim to be Knicks fans are starting to show up again. So a lot of Knicks fans in the building, which was fun. A lot of Blazer fans obviously as well, interested in seeing the Blazers get that game. Blazers end up falling 114-113 in overtime in a back and forth game throughout the entire night. Again, just the kind of game where neither team wanted to lose. It's a regular season game. I wouldn't say it had a playoff feel, but it definitely just had a feel where both teams really wanted to get that game. Both teams playing hard. A lot of chippiness, a lot of elbows getting thrown. Jabari Walker caught one, ended up having to leave the game to be checked for a concussion. Not sure what his status is going to be going forward. Toumani Camara caught one from KAT as well. Just a very physical game, kind of the kind of game that you would expect to see like in the 90s between the Trailblazers and the Knicks. You saw that Wednesday night at Moda Center in 2025. 16 lead changes and 7 ties in the first half. 42 lead changes for the entire game, which according to Tom Haberstroh is one off the NBA record for the number of lead changes in the game. Also 14 ties in that game, which just goes to show, that's one of those games where if you look at the box score and you get down to the bottom part of the box score, take away kind of like the player individual stats. When you get to the bottom, when you start looking at the second chance points and points in the paint and lead changes and ties, that really, you can look at that box score from that game and really kind of tell what happened in that game. And just a fantastic night all the way around. Would have been nice if the Trailblazers could have gotten the victory there, but I know for some of you who would rather the Trailblazers lose games anyways, probably about the best option to have a great overtime game where they fall just by 1 point. I would have liked to have seen them get the win. I think they played hard enough to win. They would have liked to have gotten the win. Nevertheless, a fantastic game for the Trailblazers, one they should feel very proud about the way they performed in it. And they did feel very proud about it. Very close game throughout the entire game. End of the first half, it was 48-46. Knicks leading just by 2 points. Both Deni and Shaedon had 14 points at that time. Scoot just 5 points in the game at that time. He did most of his damage, turned in one of his best performances after not a bad first half, but just kind of a whatever first half for Scoot. Ended up having a fantastic night. So they go into the half basically tie game. Game opens up a bit in the third quarter. The first half, both teams kind of struggling to score. Both teams, again, really physical, really tight. As I mentioned, I think there were 39 combined fouls in that game, which is not really all that many fouls, particularly for an overtime game, but just during the actual run of play, it just felt like it was a lot of banging, lot of kind of guys catching guys on screens and chips, and it's just straight up elbows. Again, just a game that felt like both teams are really scrapping to get that one, which is, when people talk about like the regular season not mattering, we're getting towards the end of the regular season, so maybe things are getting a little more, you got a Blazers team that it really wants to make the play in, and came into that game having lost four straight. You got a Knicks team that, lost Jalen Brunson, has been struggling a bit on this West Coast trip. They're out to kind of show that they can take care of business out here on the West Coast where it's a little bit tougher. I would say, obviously there was some talk too in New York about kind of the minutes guys were playing. And so I think there was kind of a little feeling there too, like, hey, let's get a win here and kind of tamp some of that stuff down. So, a very tough game in the first half opens up, as I mentioned, in the third quarter. Knicks shoot 61% from the field and 67% from three in the third quarter. The Blazers able to match that, not to that same level, but just about 55% and 56%. And at that point in time, they go into the fourth quarter, I think tied at 77-77, 11 lead changes, two ties in the third quarter. Again, game just going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. I think the Knicks never went up by more than 8. Blazers never went up by more than 5. It did feel to me like the Knicks had the lead kind of for the majority of the first half, but you go back and look at the numbers, it actually wasn't the case. It did just flop back and forth for much of that game. And, setting up a fantastic fourth quarter. As I mentioned, in the third quarter, things loosened up. Same in the fourth quarter as well. Both teams kind of deferring more to their offense in the second half after a difficult first half in terms of scoring. In the fourth quarter, that's when Scoot really takes over. He had just 10 points going into the fourth, just is everywhere in the fourth quarter, creating for himself, getting into the paint, hitting his outside shot. Had a great one of those little Steve Nash moves where you dribble down, you go around the basket, the defender kind of loses you a little bit under the basket on the baseline, and then you lay up the shot kind of around before they get their head turned around. I think we just saw a different level of play from Scoot in that fourth quarter, and really kind of what you hope to see from Scoot in the future. Just a dynamic, took his time, but was fast, like knew what he wanted to do with the ball, wasn't indecisive, took his shots when they were open, but didn't force anything. Kind of understood the moment, understood what he needed to do in order to get the team the buckets they needed to get. I just thought Scoot looked really good in that game, and really showed. Again, we've seen a lot of growth in 2025 for Scoot, but I feel like that fourth quarter, particularly in crunch time versus a good opponent, in a game where you're really trying to win, like that's a situation where, you could see a young guy kind of shrinking from that moment. And that wasn't it was the exact opposite for Scoot on Wednesday night. He met that moment and then some, hit some big free throws, and ended up having I believe the last 8 points in regulation for the Trailblazers. I believe one of those was a three, and then an and one. I believe the and one was to actually send the game to overtime. So really just a fantastic night for Scoot. But even with Scoot playing as well as he was, Blazers go down 104-98 with about a minute 20 to play in regulation after back-to-back three-pointers from Cat. And I think at that point in time, you're like, boy, geez, what that 6 points in under a minute or just about a minute to play. At that point, I think, the building is probably like, well, they played it tough, but maybe we're not going to get this one. But then, as I mentioned, Scoot scores the last 8 points in regulation, a three, an and one layup, and 3 free throws, including the game tying free throw that he earned on a drive with 3.1 seconds left to play. That ended up sending the game to overtime. The Knicks did have a chance to win it in regulation. Deuce McBride taking a long three, didn't have much of a chance. So we go to overtime. Then throughout the first 2 minutes of overtime, same thing as it's been for most of the game itself, back and forth, back and forth. I think the first 2 minutes, both teams answered their scores with the other team scoring. So they're going back and forth, trading buckets. And then both teams go absolutely cold, just start missing shots left and right. Neither team scored from the 250 mark until 3 seconds left. When Deni got blocked, was able to get his own miss, put the ball back up on the rim, got the bounce and the foul, and won. Hit the free throw to put the Trailblazers up 113-111. And at that point in time, you're feeling good about Portland's chances. Knicks call timeout, advance the ball, inbound the ball to Mikal Bridges, or no, not to Bridges, I think to McBride, or whoever was playing center for. Actually, I think it was Cat. Dribble handoff to Bridges, who gets into the middle of the floor, rises up for the three-pointer and hits it as time expires. When you're at home in that situation, I think you usually go for the tie. I think the Blazers were maybe expecting there was going to be a drive there since they were up two. But when you're the team on the road in overtime, you go for the win, and that is what Mikal Bridges did in that game. Pretty good contest from Donovan Clingan to try to get in the way, but a guy like Bridges is going to hit that shot. Chauncey had admitted after the game that he probably should have taken Donovan out in that situation. He said he wanted him in there for rebounding. If he had known that they were going to take a three and not try to drive, at that point, you probably assume that they would have definitely gotten Donovan out of there. But again, I also feel like it was a pretty good contest. The bigger issue, and that Chauncey had mentioned, and he's exactly right, is that in that situation, the Blazers had a foul to give. And in that situation, you want to foul because that runs about a second off the clock. But you got to be careful because you can't foul a guy when he's raised up to take shots, and you give him free throws, and you definitely want to make them at least make a field goal in order to win the game or at least send it to overtime. So they have the DHO. The Blazers not able to get hands on Bridges or on the inbound ball to create the foul. And unfortunately, Bridges raises up, hits wasn't a great looking shot, but I mean, he got it off and it went in. So that's all that matters. So ends up winning that one by a point, thanks to Mikal Bridges, who I believe had 33 points in the game as well. And hit a game winner on Bridges a few years ago. His little one-handed floater. So Bridges getting that one back from his good buddy Ant. They all work out together. Phil Beckner, the trainer, that works with Dame, works with Ant, also works with Mikal Bridges as well. So they got a little group there that kind of know each other, and Bridges got the better of that one. So, unfortunate the Blazers weren't able to get that one after such a great performance, but you really saw exactly what you want to see out of this team going forward. I thought Donovan had a pretty nice night, a low key night, but did what he needed to do out there. Deni has been playing phenomenal basketball here. Shaedon kind of kept the team afloat early on in the game as well, and then kind of deferred to everybody else once they started to get it going. And then again, you had Scoot who just turned in, one of his better performances, particularly in the fourth quarter. When it really mattered. I guess I would say too is that Scoot's probably had better stat nights, but I don't know that he's had a better performance in a crunch time situation, an important situation. He got the start in overtime as well after coming off the bench behind Anthony Simons to start the game too. So a little vote of confidence there as well from Chauncey Billups to roll with the hot hand and reward Scoot for the effort that he put in the fourth quarter. So that was good to see as well. And again, just like a game where you saw a lot of kind of the idea behind this Trailblazer team, a hard-nosed, defensive-minded team that can get into the paint and create mismatches, can get to the foul line, between Shaedon and Scoot and Deni in that game. And I think you can throw Tamani in there as well. Like just a really, again, just you can see the direction that this team wants to take this thing to. And I think that game versus the Knicks was a really good encapsulation of the team they want to be going forward. And there's still pieces to be added. There's still progress to be made, but like you definitely got a real sense of like, if this is the team that we're going to be going forward, all right, like this is sustainable. This feels like a team that can have success in the NBA. And, it's one night, but it's one night against a good team, after on the first game of a homestand after a long road trip. So I think that really a lot to feel good about in that one, even though you weren't able to get the win. And and Chauncey, I appreciate Chauncey kind of owning up to a few things there too, and talking about room for him to grow. About the thing about not having Donovan in there and wanting to get them to foul. He kind of put that on himself. So I think we've seen a different level of coaching from Chauncey as of late as well. So again, I think just a really good night for the team. Really great performances and a game that really is instructive about where they want to go, what they've been trying to do, and how far along they are in that process. And I think, it's going along pretty well. Just to recap it here, 30 points on 10 of 16 shooting from the field, 4 of 4 from 3, 6 of 10 from the line, 3 rebounds, 2 assists, 1 steal, and 37 minutes for Scoot Henderson. I think I saw somewhere that Scoot is the first player to score 30 points on perfect three-point shooting, or the youngest player to score 30 points and go 100% from three-point shooting, which, some of those stats are kind of whatever, but it's kind of interesting. And Scoot's shot has been one of the areas that he's needed to improve the most, and we've seen that as of late. I think at this point in time too, we're into mid-March. He's been playing well since 2025, the start of the new year. 3 months is a pretty good sample size. Scoot is shooting a really nice percentage from three, so I think you can start to feel confident about where he's at in terms of his shot. And once he has that squared away, which is starting to feel like he's getting there, and that's going to really open up a whole lot of other things for Scoot as well. Which I think that's one of the reasons why he was able to get into the paint, get to the rim, get to the foul line in the game versus the Knicks, because I think they had to respect that 3-point shot. After when you go 4-4, the other team is going to react to that. And I think we're seeing that as Scoot builds out his game and gets more and more comfortable, both in terms of shooting and playmaking, and with just the speed and pace of the game and knowing how to use his speed in order to kind of keep the defense, on their heels. I think that, you're really starting to see some real growth from Scoot. And, it might have taken an extra couple months. I don't know why everyone's always so quick to just write guys off, but I think Scoot has a whole lot to feel proud of, and I think the team has a whole lot of cause to be enthusiastic about kind of the way he's been playing as of late and what that means for this team going forward. Another guy who, again, you really understand why the Blazers went out and made the move. Deni Avdija, just another fantastic game. 27 points, 15 rebounds, 5 assists for Deni. I think he had 7 turnovers. You'd like to get that down a little bit, but still, a guy's making aggressive plays. Played over 40 minutes in that game, so you're gonna make some mistakes throughout. But it was definitely one of the reasons why they were able to win that game. Deni had the and one at the end of that game, as I mentioned. Just a guy who can get into the paint, can make things happen at the rim. After I don't even think we probably should talk about it anymore, but he did mention it last night. After kind of a rough start to the season in terms of finishing at the rim, getting to the rim, kind of knowing what to do once he got into the paint. Deni has really like figured that part out, figured out kind of what Chauncey wants him to do, where his teammates are going to be at, where he can be successful in those situations. And I mean, he is really showing himself to be, an elite player in this league. I mean, there's quite a few guys that have made big jumps. Deni feels to me like one of the most improved players this season, at least from a perspective. I mean, and part of that is because, like probably didn't watch him a whole lot in Washington. So I'm kind of getting a education on the player that he is now. But I mean, it really feels like he's taking a step forward. I mean, he already took a big jump last year. Feels like he's taking another jump this year. And I mean, I think, he goes from being someone who's like, yeah, that he's a starter to, is he one of the better forwards in the Western Conference right now? Is he someone who is potentially an all-star guy, an all-NBA guy at some point in time? I think you're starting to get closer and closer to that. His performances, I think, warrant that level of accolade. So, I mean, I'm really impressed by what we've seen from Deni, and he's had 2 games now where he had never had a first half double double in his career before the game versus the Warriors. He gets one versus the Warriors, and then he gets one versus the Knicks as well. So he does something in 2 games back to back that he had never done in the first 4.5 seasons of his career, which again, I think he's really starting to maybe kind of understand who he is as a player and where he fits in the organization. And I think maybe kind of taking that step to where it's like, I'm not just a guy who's on this team. Like I'm a guy who who should be making moves for this team and making decisions about how we're going to play and what we're going to do on a night-to-night basis. He feels like he's kind of taking those steps, both in terms of his play and, again, his understanding of what he means to the team, to really start to kind of wonder, like, how good could Deni be? And, I think we saw a lot of that on Wednesday night. As I mentioned, 27 points, 15 rebounds, 5 assists. First time that Deni's ever had 30 rebounds and 60 points combined in a 2-game stretch in his career, which he's done between the loss to the Knicks on Wednesday and the loss to the Warriors in Golden State on Monday. Just a really nice game for Deni, and again, a cause to feel like, in my personal opinion, that like he could really be an all-star guy in this league. Like it's starting to feel that way to me. And he's also getting it done on the defensive end as well. He can guard basically every position on defense. Just a really smart move for the Blazers, and one that I think, really sets them up going forward to add kind of a guy who's a veteran, but also young, to a very young team. And I think we're kind of seeing some of the best that Deni has to offer. I think we're going to continue to see that as the season goes on. And hopefully in seasons going forward. Toumani Camara as well ends up fouling out in that game. 14 points, 4 assists, 3 rebounds, 21 points, 9 rebounds, 2 assists for Shaedon. Shaedon, too, like a guy that, as I mentioned, he kind of kept the team afloat early on in the game. Again, as I mentioned, I think he had 14 points in the first half, and he came out really aggressive offensively in that game, and that's something we've seen a lot from Shaedon as of late. And again, it's a very good sign for Shaedon that he's coming out and really kind of putting his stamp on games early. I think that kind of gets him into the flow of things on both sides of the ball. I think you really have to respect it and appreciate what Shaedon has done lately, particularly in terms after getting benched, and now he's back in the starting lineup. And it seems like that message has been received, and he's taken it to heart, and his game really seems to be elevating to another level because, again, he's just coming out and being determined from the start rather than kind of letting the game come to him. And that's a great thing for the Trailblazers as well. On the Knicks side, Mikal Bridges, 33 points, including, as I mentioned, the game winner, as you well know. OG Anunoby with 23 points, and Karl Anthony Towns with 21 points and a bunch of elbows thrown at Portland Trailblazers. Well, you kind of knew that we were going to be in for a great night with the start of the game, the national anthem. Natalie Gilbert, now Natalie Zito, returning to the Moda Center almost 22 years after the infamous moment in which she forgot the words to the national anthem. A very difficult song to sing, by the way, folks. During or prior to a playoff game versus the Mavs, Mo Cheeks, who was then the head coach of the Trailblazers, now an assistant coach with the Knicks, steps out onto the court, helps her get through the rest of the song 22 years ago, in a great moment. One of the most recognizable national anthem moments. So the team brings her back. As I mentioned, she's now Natalie Zito, lives in Boise, returns to sing the national anthem that she did not finish 22 years ago, and knocks it out of the park. Just did a fantastic job with it. A great moment. Great job by the team to put it together. Great job by the game ops to get some shots of Mo Cheeks standing and watching as well. They had a little they got together before the game to say hello to each other. Just a really fun moment, a really fun kind of full circle thing. Went over really well. Crowd loved it. She belted as well too. She did a great job with the anthem. So let's go ahead and hear what she had to say with Brooke Olzendam after the anthem. Natalie Gilbert, now Natalie Zito, discussing that anthem 22 years ago, that she needed an assist from Mo Cheeks to finish. This time around, doing it on her own, doing a great job of it. Here's Brooke Olzendam with Natalie Zito during the game Wednesday night at Moda Center.
And that was Natalie Zito singing the national anthem tonight. Did a beautiful job. If she looks familiar to you, you might be right, because back in the day, over 20 years ago, when you were Natalie Gilbert, a legendary NBA moment, the nerves got the best of you, understandably so. Couldn't remember the words, and who came out to save the day? Mo Cheeks put his arm around you. The entire arena was singing. I know it was a long time ago, but what do you remember most about that moment?
I just remember I was really sick and I didn't feel like myself. And when I felt like I was very helpless and hopeless, Coach walked right over, no hesitation, and helped me finish the song.
And you were such a good sport about it. You know, you just smiled from ear to ear. How meaningful of a moment was that for you, especially at such a young age?
It was extremely meaningful. I mean, at that age, 13, I was made fun of a lot, but that moment has given me so much courage to keep going throughout my entire life in any kind of, situation where I've struggled. And yeah, I can face all my fears and I never give up.
I love that so much. And that wasn't the last time you two hung out. You and Mo kind of took the show to the road. Where did you guys go?
So I think that we were both on CNN together, and then we went on the Tonight Show together, which was a lot of fun. Mo wasn't a part of this, but I did do a web redemption on Tosh.0, and that was awesome. So
Tosh.0, I didn't see that one coming. That's incredible. So tonight you did a beautiful job of singing the national anthem. They showed Mo up on the Jumbotron smiling like a proud father. How nice was it to have that moment tonight?
Oh, it was amazing. I love to sing. I still sing. I sang professionally all throughout my 20s, but now I'm helping my father run his company, and it was just so great to get up and sing for the first time in a crowd like crowd this large. It's been probably 15 years, so it was awesome.
And earlier you got a chance to catch up with Mo Cheeks. Can we see this picture that we gave to you? Look at this side by side, incredible. What was that like? What did you guys talk about?
How are you? How you doing? All the things. I mean, it was surreal. This moment changed my life, and I wouldn't have had it any other way. I would not go back in time and change it at all. And seeing him and seeing that he's still the stand-up guy today that he was back then, it's amazing.
So I'm sure people are wondering, what are you up to now?
Running my father's company with him. I'm his vice president of environmentally conscious recycling here in Portland.
And still a diehard Blazers fan.
Still, absolutely. We have season tickets, so we're here all the time.
This was a surreal moment for me. Thank you so much. Again, you did a wonderful job tonight. Thanks for being with us.
Well, thank you so much. Pleasure meeting you.
Well, there you go. Fantastic job by Natalie Zito. Fantastic job by Brooke Olzendam. Again, she got out there, sang the song incredibly well. It's a very difficult song to sing. I have heard, I don't know how many renditions of the national anthem throughout the years. Usually the people that show up to do it at an NBA game are usually fairly well versed. A lot of arenas actually, I feel like it's more on the East Coast. They almost always just have kids sing it, like choirs. We rarely ever have choirs do it for whatever reason. I don't know exactly why. I guess we just have enough adult performers who want to do it. But either way, just a really fun thing for the team to do. Shout out to you, Natalie Zito. Congratulations on getting your moment and getting to cap that off. You're a great performer, and if you want to see more great performers, you can experience some of country music's brightest stars at the upcoming country show at Spirit Mountain Casino on April 19th, featuring John Morgan with Abby Anderson and Brandon Davis. You won't want to miss these up-and-coming country acts. Tickets start at $35 and are on sale now at spiritmountain.com. Spirit Mountain Casino on Highway 18 in Grand Ronde. Elevate your game. All right, switching gears here a little bit, have an interview, and a lengthy interview, about 20 minutes, a little bit longer than what we typically do on the briefcase. Usually I would maybe break that up into two, but figured it's just going to roll with the whole thing. Lots of great stuff in there from Trailblazers President of Business Operations, Dewayne Hankins. I've known Dewayne for years. He began his career with the Trailblazers as VP of Marketing and moved his way up, is now the, as I mentioned, team president. Talked to Dewayne about a whole host of things going on with the Trailblazers right now, just the state of the business side of the Trailblazers, the switch to KATU and over their broadcast, which I think has been an absolute boon. The game versus the Knicks, anyone in the area could have watched that. And that hasn't necessarily been the case with previous TV deals. So really a tip of the cap to the team on that. We talked about the TV deal and kind of why the team went that direction, kind of, taking a risk a little bit with that as well. And that risk paying off, at least initially. And I think absolutely not even just initially, I think going forward as well. The new big screen and video boards are going to be at Moda Center here in the not too distant future. Stats as entertainment. The team has really kind of tried to use stats as a way to tell the story more and more. We talked about that a bit as well. Expanding access to the game, both on television and just for other communities. The importance of having the organization that welcomes everybody, the Trailblazers, while, a lot of maybe other organizations kind of pulled back on some of those DEI initiatives, Trailblazers continued to forge ahead on making sure that it's an inclusive place, inclusive business. He talks about the OneCourt technology, which is for visually impaired people. Again, just the idea of trying to make games as accessible for everyone. Anyone who wants to experience a Trailblazer game, the team wants to put you in a situation where you can do that. It's really one of the team's initiatives, and so they've done a lot of different things in order to try to do that. The HBCU Weekend, the Women's Summit, which is this week, and the WNBA in Portland. Some of the things the team is doing to get ready for that. They're obviously going to be sharing the building. The Pathala family owns that. So not necessarily the businesses are there's got some work together, but they are separate entities. But Dewayne talks a little bit about the importance of the WNBA coming to Portland, and this just being a great market for women's sports, and the benefits of the Trailblazers having a very international roster. If you look up and down Portland's roster, basically over half the team is from somewhere other than the United States, which I think is pretty cool and offers up some opportunities from a business perspective. So let's go ahead and hear from Dewayne Hankins, Trailblazers President of Business Operations, about all that stuff and more. We're here with Dewayne Hankins, President of Business Operations for the Portland Trailblazers. Dewayne, thank you so much for taking the time. First off, just how are things going?
Going great. It's been a fun year.
Yeah.
We talk about it a lot in the office, but the team's really taken off. It's been awesome to see Joe's vision kind of come to life with the way these players are playing. It's been great to see the way that they're playing under Chauncey. Like, I think our fans we've been talking about these glimpses for a little while, and now fans are getting to see them, and they're seeing the results on the court. So I think that's been really fun, and just in time too, because we've got this new deal that we have already talked about from the broadcast side, but our fans are able to watch these games and watch these players in a way they haven't been able to, which is fantastic. And then just announced a few weeks ago, upgrade to the scoreboard at Moda Center. So it just feels like there's a lot of fun stuff going on, and it's exciting for our fans.
Absolutely. Just in general, I mean, you've been with the organization for a while now. How, I won't say easier, but just how much better is it when the team is kind of playing the way they're playing now? And even, like we're, I think, in 12th or 13th place right now. So it's not like we're dominating, but it's like just to have a team that people can see, as you mentioned, Joe's vision, and understand where it's going. I know for me, it feels like the reaction I get from fans and from people that are paying attention is it just seems markedly different than it has in the last couple seasons.
Yeah, I think that's great to hear. I mean, it's funny because for me, my first year, I've been here 12 years, and my first year was Damian's rookie year, but I started in April. So at that point, he'd already played most of the season, and I think we'd finished the season on a bit of a losing streak. And but the fans were excited. So this year feels very similar to that year, where it was, the team didn't make the playoffs, but they see the glimpses of what this team can become. And then, of course, the next year, the team started making the playoffs, and I think had quite the run, right? And then in my time in this role, which started in 2021, our team's been not a playoff team, and going through a rebuild and going through some changes, and obviously traded Damian. So to see the team come together the way that it has this year has made, it's just great for our fans. Like, they've stuck with us through the thick and the thin. We had a great crowd on Sunday for Bill Walton night, and just the standing room only kind of crowd, lots of energy in the building. We didn't win that game, but you felt the way you can feel in the Moda Center when it's really rocking. So that was a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Just kind of what is the general state of the business side of the Portland Trailblazers? As you mentioned, you talked about, when we'll get into it in a second here. It seems like quite a few new partnerships. Obviously, the TV deal, I think has really kind of changed the complexion of the business side a bit. Kind of how would you summate where the team is at from the business perspective?
Mm-hmm. I mean, last summer was a very busy one. We had two big rocks to kind of lift up, and that was getting our lease deal done with the city, which we've talked about before, and that was a good one to get finished. And the second one was fixing our broadcast distribution issues. This summer, it's really the big projects are the scoreboard project that we're doing, which is for the fans in their seats, like probably one of the biggest changes that they'll have seen inside the building, which is exciting. The TV deal, I think, making sure it continues to go well, that fans are able to find the games. I just want to thank our fans for being so patient with us through that change, because there's 20 years of history that would suggest our games have been hard to watch, and we wanted to make them easier to watch. But even when you do that, there's a lot of changing habits that need to happen, and fans have done a really great job of that. So it's been a lot of getting, fans in the right place there. And yeah, this summer will be, mostly focused on that project and then getting to know the new city council. Not to get too deep into Oregon politics here, but there's a brand new form of government, and with that, a new mayor and 12 new council members. And our goal has been to get them to come out to games, to understand the value of the Blazers in Portland, what role we play in the community, how a sports team can lift up a city, all those things that we believe, truly in our hearts, as I guess, folks in the business, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk a little about the scoreboard project first, and just the digital, kind of some of the changes there. I've obviously traveled with the team. I've been to every single arena many times. You kind of see throughout the years how things change. And the video board, I think, was definitely one of the things I heard from fans is like, hey, what's kind of the
Right.
state of that? And that's even from people that, aren't necessarily going to a lot of other arenas and seeing what other teams are doing. So kind of how did that project come about? What are the goals for the organization in terms of like, what does the team want to see out of those displays, out of the big screen, out of some of those secondary digital assets?
Yeah, I mean, well, I think the main thing was, after getting that deal done last year, and we kind of went in depth on this before, but for fans who don't know, there's this spectator facility fund. So there's these dollars that we now get as part of our lease. And so those are basically tax dollars on every Blazers ticket. So 94% of the Blazers revenues we get to keep. 6% went into this facility fund. Well, that 6% facility fund, as it relates to Blazers tickets, now goes towards renovating the arena. And it's all part of, the money that's generated here gets reinvested here. So some of those funds go into the scoreboard project. So the exciting thing about that is to say, okay, with these funds, one of the first things we're doing is enhancing and upgrading the view for every fan who comes to a game. It's not some private club on some section that only some fans have access to. No, this gets to every fan that gets to see this. And it'll also be ready for the WNBA's first season, which is exciting. And so I think our timing was, what's the project we can do that everyone can get excited about? And that felt like it hit the top of the list. What can help, really launch the WNBA season on the right foot? And that seemed like that was the one. So we just kept coming back to that. And the scoreboard's a funny thing because, there's a long history before my time of the Blazers have always done a really good job of having more stats, I think, available to fans to see than any other arena. When I go on the road, I'm often frustrated that I can't go up and look and see a box score like the way that the Blazers have it. But they are very old boards. And so I hear the same feedback you hear, which is like, okay, it's time to make some changes. And so we knew we needed to redo the center hung scoreboard. That was something that was getting up in age. But as we started to look beyond the project and, we get into things like how much weight can the roof hold and all that, we're like, well, let's look at these end zone boards and see if we can't make some sort of digital display. And we looked at the renderings, we looked up different mock-ups and got really excited about what we could just do with that space. Like we can bring the fans, all the stats they're used to seeing plus more. But then when we have our intros, we can change the display completely and make that part of the game night theater, if you will, of like making sure we launch the season or the game the right way, or during a timeout using those backgrounds as something related to whether that's a partner or the Fred Meyer game, if you will, for Todd. It could just be more dynamic in that way. I think that's really exciting. And we wanted to have something that we could do for the start of the season. You'll remember a couple of years ago, we had a seating project and that shut the arena down for 3 months. This project probably only keeps us offline for 4 to 6 weeks. So our summer concerts that we have fewer of because concerts go outside, but we'll still be able to have a pretty good concert load in the summer.
Yeah. And it seems like, those boards too, you see them around different areas, and just a lot of teams like kind of taking different approaches to how you're going to display things like stats and things like intros. And, those sideboards especially, I think are, that's something that I've seen a few other places, but not many. I think they have it into it, but that's really the only one in my head that I kind of like think of specifically. So it does seem like, obviously the hustle boards and having those stats available, that has been nice, but having a video board there obviously gives you, to your point, like an opportunity to maybe do something more dynamic with some of those in-game displays, which seems like something that I think enhances the fan experience while also it's still being kind of the same building, like almost the idea that like, it doesn't always have to be something, a new building. Like we can make changes to this building that enhance that experience.
Yeah, I think that's right on. I mean, one of the things we talk about all the time is, if you watch our broadcast, we're very stat heavy and we're very stat focused. And I think that comes from Paul, when, he was always really focused on making sure we had all the stats available for fans. And he also had always talked about making sure that the fans in the arena don't have a different experience than the fans at home. So like make sure just because you come to a game, that doesn't mean you should have less access to stats. And so I think we've done a pretty good job of that, but these video boards will just be able to unlock so much more as we've upgraded our broadcast and given fans more information and more, stats or visualizations or what have you. Now we can do that on the arena side as well, because we'll just have so much more opportunity with the extended displays.
Now, two things there. Just one, I did want to mention, I think in all my years with the team, I think that last game was the first time I've ever seen someone go 0-for on the Fred Meyer-Price game, which, was a little disappointing.
It was a weird game in many aspects.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
including that.
That's true. Yeah, we should keep that stat, actually. Like, we should do... We need Fred Meyer-Price game stats. Actually, that on that board, that should be part of that. And two, the only other thing I hear about, I mean, everyone's excited about getting new big screen, new video boards. They are a little concerned about where the hustle board is going, though. So, like, is there any update on like what's happening with that? Because I've heard from multiple people being like, "Well, but what happens to it, though?"
I love that fans have so much passion for those things. I mean, we were actively working on what we thought the future of those hustle boards would be, because I mean, they got moved over from the Coliseum, I understand, and put up in Moda Center. So there will definitely be some homage to them in some way, shape, or form. We don't have the answer quite yet, but we love that fans love it, and we will definitely make sure we honor those hustle boards in the right way.
Yeah, I would hope so, because again, I have heard that from multiple people. The broadcast, obviously moving to over the air with KATU. How has that partnership gone? How has just that process gone? It seems to me that this is kind of the direction a lot of teams are going. Blazers weren't the first team to do that, but I would say at this point you claim they're one of the first. And it just, obviously, being able to increase distribution is incredibly important. It seems like that has finally been accomplished, as you mentioned, after a lot of years of, having options and good options, but maybe not options that serviced every single fan. And this now seems like, for the most part, like if you want to watch Blazer games now, you can, which I don't know that you necessarily could have said in the last 20 years.
Yeah, I mean, it just became so apparent to us that the RSN industry was just changing before our eyes, like drastically. And Blazers fans are uniquely tortured, I would say, given the last 2 decades. And so we didn't want to have another year like last year where the games were only available in 20% of households. Like that was not acceptable. That's how you find your way headed towards people being ambivalent about your team or your brand or what have you. And so it was really concerning to me. Like if we knew we weren't going to be winning a lot of games. So not having them available and not winning a lot of games is going to tune a lot of people out. And so, that change that we made this summer, we bet on ourselves. We bet on the fact that we can do a great broadcast because we already have done that for years. We bet on ourselves that with more distribution, even if the team wasn't quite at the levels that, playoff level yet, we thought folks would tune in. That turned out to be the case. And then in the last month and a half, when the teams really turned the tide and gotten more competitive, we've seen ratings jump even again. So it's so, I think, so positive. It's reassuring. We still are working towards the business model because, yes, we're not, not necessarily getting that huge rights fee. But I think the long game here is that the games are more accessible. That creates lifelong fans. Those fans become Blazer fans who buy tickets or merchandise or what have you. And then the cycle sort of continues. And there's just too much distraction, I think, in the world today with other, social media or devices or apps or what have you, too many things that grab folks' attention, and we need to be easy for folks to access.
Absolutely. You talked about the stats element as well, too. It seems like that's a really important part of the broadcast. And it's one of the parts to me that I feel like I hear most from fans about things they appreciate. And like I know, working on the digital side, we'll take just screenshots of the stuff they talk about on the broadcast and put it out there. And it's always good content. And so, the notion of like figuring out different ways to display different kinds of content seems like something that you guys have really worked a lot on in the broadcast. And a lot of that is through stats. And it seems like, that has kind of worked. And it really seems like you're starting to see more and more of that in other markets as well.
Yeah. I mean, I think with a team that's, well, we would do this anyway, but with a team where wins and losses are not telling the whole story because we're a developing team, being able to share, certain players' statistics or how they compare to other players who were at their age at that time. And it helps give fans a sense of what kind of player we think these players can become, which I think is an important context to provide.
And it gives insight about the way that the organization views it too, which I think is, again, you're kind of telling fans what you guys think by what you guys decide to kind of exacerbate or point to.
Right. And I give credit to Blazer fans because they're among the smartest NBA fans that there are. Like we don't have to do a lot of explanation. Like fans get it. So if we're no longer, if your broadcast isn't the 101 course on basketball, then how do you become the 201 or 301 course on basketball? And that's adding, Tom Havastro, who's done a great job on the analytics side. It's adding Brooke's great things that she talks about the players off the court. It's having Kevin and Lamar do what they always do, and then Lamar providing that extra sort of analysis, which really helps you understand the game differently. Like, I don't think every broadcast can do that, and you have to give Blazer fans credit for being so smart to understand, how the game works, so that we can just kind of keep showing new nuances to how we're trying to do it.
I imagine too, having such a large increase in the ratings. I mean, I know you've talked about it, that part of that is just, going from only having 20% of people know see it to where it is now. But even then, like, it seems to me like the proof of concept worked. And you talk about betting on yourself, and you're right. Like those rights fees are, those were important when you were able to get them. Now that you're not, like, it's almost like you're taking a bit of a chance. And I would imagine though to see how well the broadcast has bounced back from a ratings perspective makes it feels like that chance was worth taking.
Yeah, 100%. I don't think we had a lot of concern to make the change even last summer because of where distribution was, but it does feel really reassuring to see the numbers that we're seeing. Of course, I always want to see ratings be higher because that's just the competitive part of me that wants more fans to be tuned in, but we're really happy. And for the work that our broadcast team has done to make our broadcast feel like a nationally polished broadcast, we were doing that for, I think, the last couple of years, but now more fans than ever get to see that broadcast. It's won a lot of Emmys. It's a phenomenal product that they put out. So to have, more than twice as many people being able to watch those games, I think, again, it just adds to all of it. And then from the business side, more fans watching, I know I said this, but means more tickets. It makes our partners happy. It's just all around good for our business.
Absolutely. You talked about Walton Night. We just got done with HBCU to the Pros Night. I know we've got some celebrations for some of the women's summit coming up too. Kind of why is it important for the organization to be involved in those conversations and those opportunities? And it really seems to me too that like the team where maybe societally some places have decided to pull back on some of that stuff in terms of kind of increasing the kind of diversity of who we're talking to and who we're celebrating. It seems like the team continues to really go headlong into the other direction, into really kind of celebrating those things and going out and doing more, and taking more of those opportunities, whereas maybe some places aren't as much anymore.
Yeah, I mean, sports teams just have such a unique ability to lift up a community, and the Blazers, I think, do that all the time. Like, if the Blazers are playing well, the community feels like it's in a better place. And, because of that, and because we feel like the Moda Center, in a lot of ways, we have 1.5 million people that come into the Moda Center every single year. And that makes us the largest gathering place in Oregon. I think I've mentioned that before. And with the responsibility of that comes the idea that everyone who comes to our games or our events feels like they belong or feels like they're welcome here. And it doesn't actually take that much work to be able to do that. Like, I would go to the OneCourt devices that we have for fans, right? So, visually impaired fans want to enjoy the experience of coming to a Blazer game. How can we enhance it for them? Well, this OneCourt device that we do in partnership with Ticketmaster is a great way to make a visually impaired fan feel like they can come to a game. HBCU nights separately is like, we're the furthest NBA team from an HBCU, but we think it's important because a lot of our staff went to HBCUs. Players have gone to HBCUs. Like, the NBA views it as really important. And so it's easy for us, I think, if we do it right and have the right conversations, to have an authentic celebration that celebrates HBCUs. And then with our women's summit, it's letting women know, especially in a male-dominated industry, that there are jobs for them in the sports industry that go beyond your traditional jobs. So in the front office, on the training staff, wherever. And I think the ability to showcase that with the summit, and that there's a need for that. I mean, that event sold out very quickly. It was an idea that was brainstormed with our team at Umpqua Bank to have an event like this. And it turns out that it was something that we need more of because of how quickly it sold out.
Yeah.
And I think it'll be a great event that they have later this week. But again, like, it's really, it's been talked about a lot, and probably in a negative, and definitely in a negative way in some circles, but it's so important, we think, as an organization, to make everyone feel like they can come here, feel seen, feel heard, and feel welcomed, because you can't be the largest gathering place in the state and not do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And you really feel from fans too that like there's an appreciation for those events as well. Like I guess what I'm trying to say too is it's not like, it's never struck me the team does it because they're like, well, this is something we got to do,
right?
Like, and there has been initiatives throughout the years where it does feel like it's like, all right, let's just do it.
Right.
These things don't feel like that. It feels like there's a real authenticity and a real desire to service those fans and to not even just fans, but to increase, to your point, kind of the people who come to the building who want to experience Blazers basketball, who maybe are not in the demographics that are generally considered to be sports fans.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And if you didn't do it authentically, like, it would never work.
Yeah.
Again, people have their BS meters are way up on stuff like that. And if it's not authentic, we have a great team internally that has those conversations, whether that's like locally with the community or different groups, to make sure that what we do is authentic to the groups that we're celebrating.
Absolutely. You talk about kind of some of those groups too. I was looking around in the locker room the other day and I was like, they were a really international team, like you got DA who's from the Bahamas, you got Deni who's from Israel, you got Tu who's from Belgium, you got Rayon who's French, Dwap is South Sudanese,
a couple Canadians.
Yeah, like even so I'm curious too, like from that perspective, that's gotta be good for the business as well, because I mean, basketball is an international game. I think you're seeing more and more, it's global. A lot of the best players in the league are international players. And I imagine that from a business perspective, again, it's probably kind of nice to be able to say like, hey, we have all these different cultures, all these different countries that are represented on our team. One, it's just good because I think that increases everyone's kind of appreciation for things, but also it's like, this also kind of gets us in front of people that maybe we wouldn't have been before.
Yeah, I mean, I get to give kudos to our GM, Joe Cronin, who I think really early on said we weren't, international scouting was an opportunity for us.
I do remember that. Yeah, that's kind of one of his first things. Yeah,
and man, he was right, and not only because the guys that have really hit on our team are it's a very international roster, as you said, but the league has become so international, and they take a lot of pride in that. And I think when we talk to the NBA and Adam Silver all the time about the growth of the league, they're constantly looking at other markets to expand the league, and it's of course about growing fans, but it's about like, where could there be really good NBA players? Their Basketball Africa League is a great example of that. There's been plenty of headlines about their desired expansion into Europe, and it's exciting. And if we're going to do that on the basketball side, which we have, like, what opportunities does that mean for us on the business side? Well, the league already has opened up opportunities for us to have international partnerships. We've done those in the past, but I think we could do more, especially with Jersey Patch, which is such an international asset. You look at potential of down the line or down the road playing international games, like that opens up opportunities for you. And we have raised our hand to the league and had good conversations. No plans yet about where and when that could be, but like the opportunity to do so is really exciting. So yeah, I mean, it opens up tons of opportunity. I think NBA has goals of being, a huge international sport, and they've been very intentional about that, and it's exciting to watch that happen.
I was talking to Tumani on this last trip about it. I was like, what do we got to do to get a game in Belgium? So, we're having conversations about it.
I love it.
I don't know if they're going anywhere yet, exactly.
Yeah.
But, I'm talking to my people about it. Like, I'd love to get over to Europe again. Let me cover a Blazer game in Europe. That would be fantastic. Always got to ask you a question about All-Star, particularly in terms of kind of how people have talked about All-Star as of late in the weekend and feeling like it maybe needs some kind of revitalization. One, what is the status of that campaign? And two, does kind of some of the talk around All-Star Weekend, does that at all diminish the interest in getting an All-Star game, or is that something where the team is trying to get it done regardless of kind of what the year-to-year criticisms about the All-Star game might be?
Yeah, I'll talk about our own desires to have it. I think, it always strikes me that as long as the Portland Trailblazers have been around, they've never had an All-Star game here. And I think a lot of people point to the biggest event being when the Dream Team practiced or played games here in 1992.
Yeah, I think it was a
exhibition game.
Yeah, it was the Game of Americas or something like that. I can't remember what it was called now.
So I mean that had been the biggest event. I know that in 2030 when we host the Women's Final Four, that will be the biggest sort of national stage event that this city ever hosts, and we're excited to host it, and that's going to be great. But we really want to use it as a launching pad to say that Portland can do big things and host big events. And whether that's a WNBA All-Star game or an NBA All-Star game down the line, like those are things that we want to bring to the city because A, our fans deserve it, and B, we just think that there's so much opportunity in Portland to have sports raise this city's profile. It's gotten a bad rap in the last couple of years, and I think when people come here, they view it differently and experience it differently, and we just want to show how important sports can be to a city and to its ecosystem. What I want to give credit with the league is I'm not one to like, I think that their ability to continue to try to do different things to try to make the All-Star game appealing and interesting is good. Like, they're not going to rest on their laurels. They know that they didn't hit the mark again this year, and it's just a tough thing. Yeah. I think. And when the media is focused on it, like obviously the microscope gets larger. And I don't think it's just the NBA that's having challenges. Like the NHL is struggling with how to deal with it. MLB, of course, NFL with their Pro Bowl. So
NFL gave up on it 10 years ago. There's whatever. We don't care anymore.
So I think there is something special about getting to see all those guys play together. And actually, I talked to someone. It was a few weeks ago, and they said the allure of an All-Star game has changed because now you get national TV contracts and you see these guys play all the time.
Yeah.
So it hasn't really. Yes, they're playing together, and that's different. But you no longer, you can watch any star player play anytime you want. So that's something that they have to factor in. I don't think the All-Star game's going anywhere. I think that weekend is special for a lot of reasons for a lot of people, including the players, even if the game doesn't quite show it. So, but I applaud the league for continuing to not settle for the product that they keep trying to change.
Yeah, and I mean, just being willing to take some chances and kind of work through something. I think that's something that I don't feel like sports leagues did at all 10, 15 years ago. And now I feel like every team is like, oh, let's mix it up a little bit here, see if there's something there. Real quick, I wanted to ask you about WNBA real fast. What is the status of that? I know that obviously that the different ownership, but you talked about the video boards being ready for their inaugural season. Kind of what's the state of the WNBA in Portland from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, just really excited. The Bethals, the ownership group, is a phenomenal family, and they're going to do an incredible job. They're already doing an incredible job with the Thorns. They're building a brand new practice facility for both teams. I think it's going to be great. I know the president of the Thorns really well, and that team's in good hands. And I know they're out searching for a president right now for their WNBA team. So, it's going to be fun. Like I'm excited to, we already are in a lot of ways the epicenter of women's sports, and the family that bought the Thorns and the WNBA team certainly believe that as well. I'm so excited to see the WNBA come to Portland and take the place that it needs to take, which is like having a great environment, great arena, great fans. It's going to be a lot of fun, and we're going to have basketball all year round. Like, you go back to pre-pandemic and it was just the Blazers, and I know the Remix are a small team, but you've got pretty great basketball being played up the street at the University of Portland. You've got the Blazers, and you'll have the WNBA, and I think it's great for our city. Like I said, I think sports can raise communities, and then adding a big franchise like that's only going to help.
Dwayne, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Case. Always a blast.
All right, there you go. Dewayne Hankins, Trailblazers President of Business Operations. Some very interesting stuff there. A lot of cool things going on in the organization right now. Where he mentioned the hosting of the WNCAA women's tournament. Team is preparing for that. Obviously, you got the WNBA coming online here in a couple seasons. That's gonna really kind of change things in the arena and in the city. And then kind of some of the things they're doing to the building as well. And the Moda Center, is getting up there a little bit in age, but they're making some changes to it. There's some revitalizations that are really going to put the building in a place where it can be a meeting place for the community going forward, whether that be for games or concerts or other events. It's an important part of the Portland community, as Dwayne mentions. It's the biggest meeting place in Oregon, and so the team and the city now, kind of in consort, working on kind of improving the building and making it a welcoming place for everyone, and a place that the city and the state can be proud of, and a place where people can come together and experience great things. Which again, to kind of take it back to the Knicks game, you had an event there where you got people from New York, you got people from Oregon, Washington, people coming to see an anthem, people from Idaho, like a place where a lot of people got together on a Wednesday night in the middle of March and saw something amazing. To have a place where 20,000 people, strangers, got together to see something phenomenal and interesting happen, be it the anthem, be it the game itself. I think that really just kind of, when people talk about the power of sports, the unifying power of athletics, I think that's kind of what we saw on Wednesday night is a really good encapsulation of kind of all the best things from the anthem to the game itself. Just a really great night, and really a reminder of how important basketball is in this community, and when it's good and when it's exciting, just how it can lift up the entire community, how it can lift up the city, the state, and how it can just give you, a moment that is real and authentic and fun. I mean, so we're on press row last night, and some families were leaving, but I think once the Knicks went up, I think kind of some of the folks with younger kids probably getting ready to be like, all right, let's get out of here. So we had a bunch of kids who were sitting right next to press row last night, watching the end of that game and just freaking out. And it's just such a great reminder, and so much fun to just see just how engaged people are about the team and sports, and when it's exciting and when there's something on the line, just how much fun that can be. And it was just a really great night at Moda Center. All the more reason to come out and check out some of these games here on this homestand the team is on right now. Last long extended homestand of the season. So we got 6 more games on the homestand. Then we'll head out for 5 games. And then at that point, we come back, and I think we got a few games here and there. And then, if they don't make the play-in, which, having lost 5 straight, chances of making the play-in continue to get further and further away for the Trailblazers. The Mavs aren't really making a move either, but the Blazers got to jump the Mavs and the Suns at this point in time. And, getting that game on Wednesday night would have kind of set them on a path, I think, to start making some progress there. Weren't able to do it. So, unfortunately, I think the chance of making the play-in are getting less and less with every single loss. But, who's to say what's going to happen? Even if they don't make the play-in, as I mentioned, still a whole lot of reason to come out to Moda Center, because you might see something absolutely exciting, enthusiastic, and fun, which was the case Wednesday night. And that's going to do it for this edition of The Briefcase. Thank you so much for joining me, as always. More episodes as the weeks go on. Trailblazers, as I mentioned, in the midst of one of their longest homestands of the season. They have 3 days off before getting back to work on Sunday in a game where they will host I actually don't even know who they're playing on that game on Sunday. Probably should have looked this up before going on air, folks, but now you're seeing how the sausage gets made. Trailblazers hosting the Toronto Raptors on Sunday, 3 o'clock start time in that game, followed by the Wizards on Monday. So another Sunday, Monday back-to-back for the Trailblazers. Tuesday off, host the Memphis Grizzlies. On Wednesday, the 19th, host the Nuggets on the 23rd. That's a Friday. God, boy, geez, these are some tough games. Boston, and then Cleveland on the 23rd and the 25th before heading out, starting that 5-game road trip. So check out the Moda Center. Some great games coming up here. Some chance for some wins here. Toronto and Washington, 2 teams that below Portland in the standings. And again, if they're going to have any chance at making that play-in, I would say these next 2 games at Moda Center are absolutely must-wins. If not, then I think you kind of start to do the math and face some facts. But until then, thanks so much for joining me. As always, please like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you so much to Spirit Mountain Casino for the support. I am Casey Holdahl. We will talk to you soon. Go Blazers.